Thank you so much, Janet. So Brendan Bromwich, who leads the systems thinking team in Mott MacDonald, is going to cover a couple of slides. So I'll hand over to Brendan. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. So Kerri and I work together, and it's a privilege to be kind of invited to join this. I'll be talking through some slides, but fantastic. It was set up as a conversation with, and we look forward to having it's a conversation with us both as we follow up on the slides. So great to be doing another double act with Kerri. Let me share my slides. My screen. Just bear with me.
Brendan, just while you're doing that, we can pop in the chat the link to the Net Zero Infrastructure Industry Coalition, and it's a really great initiative that Mott MacDonald put a lot of effort behind, and there are a number of other organisations involved. So we can do just a little bit of a recap on the Net Zero. It's not very snappily named in Infrastructure Industry Coalition just at the end of it. Brendan, I hope that's bought you just a little bit of time.
Thank you very much, much appreciated. I think we're there. You should be able to see a railway tunnel.
Yeah, we can see that.
Great. So yeah, it's lovely to be talking about this, and great to see the work that you've been doing in progressing this perspective, this approach, and this is kind of in a step of other publications. When you work through the Major Projects Association kind of playbook, then at the early stage you get pointed to taking a whole systems approach, and you get to the link to this great report on by KPMG by Janet, and you kind of just how to kind of mainstream into business as usual, taking this bigger perspective. It's got a lot of kind of very clear advice, and ESG as BAU to kind of give you the acronym soup, but you can see the direction of travel there. And then what we've done in this report is, okay, look, let's flesh this out in terms of what does it look like. And so it was Kerri and my colleague Heather Marshall who set it out as an ABCDE approach, just to kind of really kind of make it more tangible. Another colleague said Heather had managed to demystify systems thinking, which I think is a great way of framing this. So, okay, look, why should we apply systems thinking to the challenge of decarbonisation? And here are some of the ideas which we found in our project. It really does deliver on that. So take a holistic view. You're able to look at the whole issue rather than taking a piecemeal approach, and that's how you find things really do change, if you're able to kind of take that wider lens. And then we find you do end up with interconnected solutions, because addressing one problem, you may find that has co-benefits in other areas, in which case, well, then you can get multiple revenue streams around that, or you can actually get a whole suite, a portfolio of interventions, which some enable others, and so on. And you're able just to map that out with integrity by taking a whole systems approach. You can avoid unintended consequences, and one of the nice things in doing this work is how in each project you end up with, oh gosh, if we did this, which looks like a least regrets option, well, it'll do that. And we've had things like, to address climate change in London, you want to be kind of planting more trees. Well, okay, that's fine, so long as you take into effect that if you've got more trees and you've got storms earlier in the year, you're going to could get a potentially very significant increase in leaf fall, which really could cause trouble for trains. And that's the kind of unintended consequence that we identify as we go through this kind of work. Enhanced collaboration. I cannot stress this enough, that if you do a systems thinking project well, you end up by joining together groups of people who become allies and understand the big picture. They understand in the way in which their system that they work with, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts in ways that they didn't know before. So you end up with a group of people who understand things differently, not just a piece of analysis that people need to read. And we found in the work we often refer to saying the journey matters, because it's that co-learning is very, very significant. It's efficient. in terms of you can find solutions with multiple benefits, as I've said, and you're by taking a systems approach, you refine the exam question, rather than just kind of cracking on and doing your analysis. You may find actually there's another way of doing this, and you can do your analysis maybe better targeted in moving forward. And you can use it for adaptive strategies, and we've used this in kind of major cities where we've been working, and we've done systems thinking where there's an adaptive strategy for the development. And what it enables us to do is to kind of just kick the tires on every single decision point and say, look, what are the potential unintended consequences at those decision points, and what are the things that it enables which could be done in a different order if you've got the whole system in view. So I want to kind of set out the ABCDE, and then we'll just look at a couple of case studies, and then we'll set up for an open conversation. So to begin with, aim high is, okay, look, work out what the scope is of what you're trying to do. But I think what's quite interesting in this, aim high, set out the scope, but there's a lovely kind of Eisenhower principle in terms of sometimes you find if you make the problem just a bit bigger, you may then find the solution. So by setting it out in this way, then you can do that, but hold lightly to it, just in case you find by digging into the detail that the problem is actually just upstream, in which case you'll find that in terms of the evaluation, the developing and testing, you've got that feedback. Okay, broaden your perspective. So get people in the room to talk together about it, get the insights of everyone across the whole system. And then once you've gone into that and perhaps you've mapped out the system in a participatory way, then collaborate on plans, as I say, with this new collective shared understanding of what the system is. Then you can develop and test, you kind of work out in more detail what the options are, work out how they work in combination, do some modeling, do some costing, do some cost benefit analysis, and then you can kind of move into kind of developing the plan and beginning to implement the plan and have that feedback loop around evaluation. And who might use this? And I've kind of, as I picked these up, I've had a kind of major railway in mind as we go through this. So your director of strategy and regulation, how are they going to manage that railway? They want to know all the interconnected parts. Then kind of maybe talking with the asset manager, what is their handback strategy over the longer term? And if they can work out what their long-term handback strategy, that's going to show how they're going to do the maintenance, and maybe they need to bring in another operator at the same time. Maybe they've got a major signaling kind of process. All of these things happening together, work out how they're interconnected, so you can optimize your asset management strategy, and you've got the agility to work out what multiple futures you're working towards. Because it's the same as the adaptive planning question. If your strategy is going one direction, but actually you then work out you've got a different future you've got to work with, well, what are the unintended consequences of making all of those decisions? If you've mapped out the system, you can handle that. Similarly, with the commercial manager, is going to be able to kind of work out on the basis of that asset management strategy what the commercial strategy should be. We find the same thing in urban planning, and I gave you an example kind of in relation to London, but we've also done a major adaptive planning in other urban areas, checking on those decision points. And similarly, you want the operational manager in the midst of all of this, because apart from anything else, they're going to be informed how the system actually works, as well as deriving benefit from it. So we'll look at the Copenhagen example, and then I've got another example, which is actually one that I worked on. So I'm going to talk more about the one I know in more detail, but I want to flag this one up. I don't know if you've been to Copenhagen. It is a lovely place, and I went there on a Wednesday, and as I was having dinner, I realized there was no traffic outside, and then just a bunch of roller skaters kind of started coming past, and they came past, and they came past, and they came past. It's a city with that creativity where people they just make decisions collectively, and you can close the roads in downtown for roller skating, and I assume it's the same with cycling. So they had this ambitious plan to improve the increased the cycling, and then they kind of went through the process of working out what it meant, what are the interfaces with the other forms of transport. Then once they've got all of those kind of transport actors together, then they can kind of make those joined up plans. But then in step D, they've got to dive into the detail and the smart traffic management, mobility as a service, etc. You've got to work out the detail, and sometimes things come unstuck at that point. It's worth saying that it may be you get to that point and you think, okay, look, there's a real showstopper here, and then you've got to go back and redesign, and then you do your evaluation, and it's great to see the kind of the impact on in Copenhagen relating to the uptake of cycling there. So the example that another example just to kind of work on is you may be aware that there's a huge amount of investment in the water sector at the moment, including 2 reservoirs in the east of England with a combined price tag of something in the region of £6 billion. Anglian Water spoke to us and said, look, how can we design these reservoirs in a way that enables cascading benefits across the landscape? And the way we tackled this is we set the whole thing out as a system. We spoke with all the stakeholders and we worked out, okay, look, what are the things which could change? So in terms of the ABCDE, that there was already a conversation going on around which has got the future fens integrated adaptation. So that was the aim, kind of to address the significant problems of social deprivation in the fens, and they wanted to kind of make sure that they were making this investment in a way which addressed that. Then they broadened the perspectives, and how can we kind of reconnect the agriculture, and how can we address the social deprivation, address flooding, etc., all those things you'll see in just a moment. And then we wanted to co-create a feasible plan, and that you'll see in just a moment how we went about doing that. But once we kind of created the big picture, then we wanted to develop and test it. And so we had to, I mean, the kind of headline in all of this is that we said that, look, if you rather than filling the water with the reservoirs with large pipes, if you use the open channels that you've got there, then you're restoring something in the fens, which means you can shunt water around in different ways. You can address the flooding problems, you can address irrigation problems, you can allow some fenland to be re-wetted, other areas to be, you can invest more in agriculture, extend growing seasons, improve jobs. Once you improve jobs, you can improve housing. If you improve housing, then you get a whole load of health benefits as well. So that was the dialogue which came through, and we needed to kind of test this on in terms of the detail. The conversation went on the basis of kind of there's 3 areas of interaction with the reservoirs. You can work in the upstream catchments and intervene there in ways that benefit the reservoir, which also have local benefits. You can work in the area close to the reservoirs which share water, and that's the key one which I just mentioned now. And then you can also kind of work in areas like Cambridge, where we're going to receive water, which means that we can close boreholes and restore our chalk streams and improve the rivers around us. So it was it just had a fantastic kind of impact, this project. I mean, not only did it get approval in the DCO Gate 2 approval, but it also opened up a new dialogue with the finance community. So as part of this work, we've met with financiers who hitherto haven't been able to invest in nature because environmentalists come up with tiny schemes. We think if we can kind of invest £1 million in a catchment, we're doing something useful. But that, a large-scale investor isn't going to want to engage in anything less than 250 or 300 million pounds. Whereas in this case, they were able to invest, they could say take a £1 billion slice of reservoir, add on 200 million pounds of this transformative green work across the landscape, and then they've got a £1.2 billion investment, which is green and safe, because we had identified about £1 billion worth of benefits, which between £1 billion of additional investment, between £3 and £6 billion worth of benefit, depending on how you price carbon and biodiversity. And this work is now being taken forward. So, I mean, those are the case studies we want to put out there to put some flesh on the bones. And it's lovely that, you know, this is how we end up, Leonardo and Da Vinci. We're not the first to come up with this. Realise that everything connects to everything else. Thank you.